My name is Nora Wells. I'm 34, and I've worked at Carr & Finch LLP for over a decade. If you've ever given everything to a place, your time, your weekends, your peace, you'll understand what I felt that morning. The betrayal didn't come with yelling. It came with a conference room door opening too quietly. I had just finished prepping the final revisions for the Crownwell acquisition, a deal that would put our firm on the global map. I stayed until 11 p.m., the night before triple-checking. Every clause. My notes were still open on my desk. The coffee I'd just poured was still too hot to sip when I saw him. Jason Carr. He walked through the main floor like he already owned it. Dark suit, no tie, phone in hand, expression somewhere. Between bored and smug, he was only 29. His father, Richard Carr, the founding partner, had built the firm from scratch. Jason inherited it 3 weeks ago, when his father stepped back for surgery. This was the first day he officially stepped into the office. He didn't say good morning. He didn't ask how things were going. He just stopped at the edge of my cubicle, eyes scanning my workstation like I was some outdated piece of software. "Nora," he said flatly. "Conference room. Now." I blinked. Is something wrong? He didn't answer, just turned and walked away. I followed, heart thudding. He didn't. Sit when we entered the room. "Let's keep this simple," he said, adjusting his cuffs. "We're restructuring, trimming excess. We don't need legacy staff slowing us down." "Legacy?" I repeated. "People who are too attached to the old way. We need fresh blood, speed, not people who drag things out in process meetings." I kept my voice steady. "Jason, it's Mr. Carr," he interrupted, without looking up. "You can collect your things. Effective immediately." I stood there, motionless. Just 2 weeks ago, I'd led the negotiations that secured the firm's largest international client. The paperwork for Crownwell was sitting in my inbox, waiting for final signatures. I had built the entire contracts and strategy unit from the ground up. It didn't even exist before I joined. And yet here I was, being dismissed like a temp. I wanted to scream. I wanted to defend myself, to list every hour I'd worked through holidays, every deal I salvaged, every intern I mentored into management. Instead, I smiled. Calm. Controlled. "Understood," I said. He didn't even look up. As I turned to leave, I saw the senior associate, Marla, glance up from her desk. Her eyes flicked to mine in confusion. I gave her a small nod and kept walking. I packed my desk in silence. No tears, no drama. Just a quiet unraveling of a career I had built with patience, grit, and trust. As I walked out of the building for what I assumed was the last time, the city outside felt colder. But it wasn't winter. It was something else. Something shifting. I didn't know it yet. But this wasn't the end of the story. Jason had fired me like I was dead weight. But what he didn't realize is that he'd just cut loose the one person who had legal authority to close the biggest deal in the firm's history. And he hadn't even read the contract. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying the words in my head. We don't need legacy staff. Legacy, like I was some outdated filing cabinet in the hallway. I stared at the ceiling until sunrise. My inbox was still synced to my phone. I saw it filling with messages, none from Jason. All from confused associates, missed calendar alerts, meeting requests I was no longer part of. But it wasn't anger that kept me awake. It was a question. Why now? Why would Jason fire me 2 days before the Crownwell contract was set to close? It was the biggest international deal in the firm's history. A 7-month negotiation, multiple time zones, 3 rounds of legal translation, and 2 executive-level reviews. I'd handled every detail myself. Did he even look at the documents? Before pulling the trigger. At 9:06 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. I didn't think I could handle another polite HR dismissal or some junior associate calling to say sorry like they meant it. But something told me to answer. Hello? The voice on the other end was one I hadn't heard in weeks, low, gravelly, but familiar. Nora, it's Richard Carr. I sat up, heart stalling. I just got back to the office this morning. My office assistant told me you packed up and left? What happened? I hesitated. Your son fired me. Silence. Then a slow inhale. Yesterday? I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Said I was dragging the firm down. That he didn't. Need legacy staff. Another pause. This one deeper. Then he asked a question that shifted the entire floor beneath me. Did he even read your contract? My chest tightened. What do you mean? Tell me he didn't. He trailed off. I heard drawers opening, rustling papers, then a muttered curse. He was flipping through documents now. Fast. Nora, you are the only authorized legal representative listed for the Crownwell agreement. My stomach dropped. Excuse me? That clause we added last fall. After the Whitemore arbitration mess, it gives you sole closing authority on any international deal exceeding $5 million. You negotiated Crownwell. You reviewed the risk disclosures. Only you can sign the binding resolution clause. I froze. He fired the only person who can legally close the deal? Yes, Richard said. And Crownwell's CEO is flying in tomorrow for final signatures. For a long time, neither of us spoke. I looked at my cold coffee, the same cup I'd brought home with me yesterday. It still sat on the table, untouched, bitter, burned. Then, I laughed, just once. Soft. Bitter. Because it was all suddenly very clear. Jason didn't just make a mistake. He made the mistake. He assumed I was replaceable, that I was just another name on a spreadsheet. But he hadn't even bothered to open the document that controlled his father's biggest deal. And that was when something shifted inside me. The hurt was still there, but it was buried beneath something else now. Leverage. Richard's voice was calm again, but colder this time. I'm going to call you back in 20 minutes, but I want you to know this. I'm sorry, Nora. I trusted him with something I built with my own hands, and he just threw a match at it. I didn't say much, just nodded. When the call ended, I sat for a while in silence. No music, no background noise. Just me and the sound of a house that suddenly felt far less empty. Jason thought firing me was an easy win. What he didn't know is that when I signed my contract, I had built my value into the foundation of the company. And now, he couldn't move forward without me. I didn't rush to call Richard back. I didn't reply to the unread messages that had started stacking up from the firm. Instead, I sat on my balcony with the same cold cup of coffee from yesterday. The sky was overcast, gray, moody, undecided. It felt appropriate. At 10:13 a.m., my phone rang again. This time, it was the firm's main line. I didn't pick up. 2 minutes later, Jason. I stared at the screen, watching his name appear for the first time with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt yesterday. He had no idea what he'd done, and now he needed me. The call went to voicemail, then another call, from reception, then legal, then accounting. My phone lit up like a Christmas tree on caffeine. But I didn't answer a single one. I wasn't being petty. I was being intentional. You don't get to erase someone's entire career with a shrug and then expect them to come running when you realize the building is on fire. I tapped open the first voicemail. Nora, it's Jason. I think there may have been some confusion yesterday. Can we talk? It's urgent. We might need you to come in today. There it was. No apology, not even a corporate version of, We regret how things unfolded. Just polished panic, dressed up as politeness. At 10:32, another number popped up, one I hadn't saved in years. Nicole. She had started under me as a junior associate, then transferred to the marketing legal division. We'd lost touch after she moved floors. I picked up. "Nora, oh my God, you will not believe what's happening right now." Her voice was hushed but electric. "Jason's getting ripped apart in the main boardroom. Mr. Carr just walked in with the Crownwell contract and slammed it on the table." I raised an eyebrow. "He brought the contract?" He asked Jason one question. "Did you even read this before firing her?" Jason tried to bluff. Said something about reshaping operations and agile leadership, but it didn't land. Mr. Carr flipped straight to the clause. "Your clause. The one that says you're the sole negotiator authorized to finalize international acquisitions above $5 million. Jason went white. I exhaled slowly. "And what did Mr. Carr say?" He said, "If this deal falls through, your position here becomes negotiable." I didn't respond right away. That was it. The first real fracture in Jason's armor. Not because I raised my voice, but because I hadn't said a word. He fired me without reading the very contract that gave me control of everything he needed to succeed. And now? Now the silence was speaking for me. Nicole paused. "I don't know what you're planning, but whatever it is, you have the upper hand." I hung up after thanking her. Then I stood. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet, but I knew this. Jason had made a fatal mistake. He tried to erase the one person holding the keys, and now he was locked out, with the whole company watching. By 11:15 a.m., I received a message. This time, it wasn't from Jason. It was from Richard Carr. "Nora, I'm sincerely sorry for what happened. I misjudged the situation. Please come in, not just for the deal, but so we can talk. Privately." There it was. Not panic, not desperation, just acknowledgement. It was tempting to head straight in. But I wasn't about to walk back into the same firm like nothing happened, especially not under Jason's shadow, so I responded simply, "I'll consider returning to finalize the Crownwell deal, under specific conditions. I'd like to speak with you directly before anything else." He replied almost immediately, "Understood. I'll make time. Full privacy. Whatever you need." I changed out of the soft tee and leggings I'd worn all morning. Instead, I chose something deliberate. Structured black blazer, low bun, minimal makeup, and a silver pin my mother had given me the day I signed my first contract with the firm. Not for drama. For clarity. By the time I walked through the front doors of Carr and Finch, it was just afternoon. I didn't use the employee side entrance. I walked through the main lobby, slow, measured steps on the marble floor. Heads turned, conversations paused. Everyone had heard. Now they were watching. The receptionist stood the moment she saw me. "Ms. Wells," she stammered. "Mr. Carr is expecting you. Right this way." The atmosphere in the office had changed. People lifted their heads from cubicles. Some stood, some whispered. Even the interns had stopped pretending to type. It wasn't tension anymore. It was anticipation. Richard Carr stood at his office door when I arrived. "Nora," he said, his voice even. I nodded, but I didn't smile. I didn't extend my hand. He stepped aside, letting me enter first. The door clicked shut behind me. He leaned against it, exhaled, and spoke quietly. "I made a mistake. A big one. I gave my son too much authority. Too fast. I wanted him to prove himself, but I didn't expect him to burn bridges before he ever learned how to build them." I didn't respond. I waited. He walked slowly to his desk and sat down. "What he did to you was unprofessional, disrespectful, and frankly, it jeopardized a deal we've worked over half a year to secure. I nodded once. Yes, it did. I read your contract again this morning, he continued. You were granted full autonomy over the Crownwell account. Legally, ethically, operationally. No one else can sign it in this firm's name. That clause was inserted for a reason. I remember, I said. I wrote it. His eyes flicked up. You didn't deserve what happened yesterday, and I'd like to offer you your job back, with full authority to finish the deal. Whatever conditions you need, we'll make them work. There was sincerity in his voice, and regret, but I wasn't here for apologies. I'll return, I said. But I want everything in writing. Revised contract, autonomy, and zero interference from Jason. He nodded without hesitation. Done. And one more thing, I added, voice calm but firm. This can't happen again. Not to me. Not to anyone. He paused, then nodded slowly. You have my word. I stood. And as I exited the office, I saw Jason standing down the hallway, half hidden in a conversation with a junior executive. His arms were crossed, posture tense. But when our eyes met, he froze. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. I walked straight past him, not with vengeance, with proof. Proof that silence can roar louder than a scream when you know exactly what you're worth. For the next 2 days, the Crownwell deal moved forward like nothing had happened. On paper, everything looked perfect. The boardroom was prepped. The client was en route. The contracts had been reviewed. And I had full authority again. But something in the air felt off. At first, it was small things. My travel reimbursement for the Crownwell prep meeting delayed. Then a document I submitted for final sign-off was returned. Unsigned, no explanation. And then an email. An email I never sent. Apparently, a draft with incorrect client numbers had been forwarded from my address to our Dubai partner firm. The numbers were wrong, the timing was suspicious, and if the partner hadn't reached out directly to clarify, it could have stalled the deal completely. I reported it to our internal IT team. They checked for external hacks. Nothing. It came from inside the office, they said. It originated from a shared workstation. Break room corner terminal. That was when I knew. Jason wasn't finished. He'd realized he couldn't fire me outright. Not while Crownwell was still on the table. So now he was trying to erode me quietly. The way cowards do. It wasn't the first time I'd seen it. Either. Years ago, at my first job out of law school, I watched a partner slowly destroy a senior associate's reputation. Not through confrontation, but through isolation. He'd reroute projects behind her back, change deadlines and shared calendars, leak passive-aggressive concerns in meetings she wasn't invited to. She left without a scene. I promised myself I'd never let that happen to me. So I started documenting everything. Every delay, every error I didn't make, every file mysteriously misplaced. And then, one afternoon, I got my confirmation. I was walking past the smaller conference room when I heard voices, muffled but familiar. Jason's voice, low and condescending. She's unstable, he said. Since she came back, she's been erratic. I don't think she's fit to manage high-pressure clients. Another voice responded. Someone newer, one of the rising execs from finance. But the Crownwell deal? She pulled that off under pressure. Jason scoffed. She got lucky. We can't build a company on luck. I think it's time we start thinking about succession planning. I stood frozen for a second. Not out of fear, but from the cold precision of it all. He wasn't trying to stop me. He was trying to poison the ground beneath me. That night, I stayed late. The office was dim, almost empty. I sat in the boardroom, lights off, watching the city pulse through the floor-to-ceiling windows. A calm I used to love now felt like waiting for a fuse to reach the end. And then I heard a voice behind me. "Still here?" I turned. Richard Carr. I gave a faint nod. "You too?" He stepped inside, set a folder on the table. "Your revised contract," he said. "Everything we agreed on. Autonomy, protection, oversight." I opened it. The terms were solid. Then he paused. "I've also started an internal audit." I looked up sharply. "What?" "Too many things have gone missing. Too many things tied to your name." He met my eyes. "I'm not blind, Nora. I know Ryan." He caught himself. "Jason isn't finished. So why haven't you stopped him?" He was quiet. Then he answered. "Because I needed to see how far he'd go." He didn't sound like a CEO anymore. He sounded like a father. I closed the folder and nodded. "I don't need protection," I said quietly. "I need you to decide what kind of legacy you want to leave behind." His eyes lingered on mine for a long moment. Then he left, and I sat in the dark, knowing this war was far from over. The next few days inside Carr and Finch felt different. Not louder, quieter. Conversations dulled when I entered a room. Screens dimmed. Eye contact came hesitantly, if at all. Some employees smiled weakly. Others suddenly remembered meetings that didn't exist. The internal audit had begun, and everyone knew it. The office felt like a house with bad plumbing, like something deep in the walls was about to burst, and we were all just pretending we didn't hear the drip. On Thursday morning, I was called into the audit committee's temporary setup, an old storage room now transformed into what looked like a forensic war room. Monitors glowed with data. Whiteboards were filled with logins, timestamps, timelines, internal reports. Paper stacks were labeled with names, including mine. David, the lead auditor, greeted me with a firm nod. "Nora, thanks for coming in. We'd like to ask a few questions." I sat down across from him, folding my hands. He pulled up a screen. "We're starting with this. An email, sent from my account. The one with the incorrect Crownwell financials. We've traced this to a shared workstation in the break room," he continued. Credentials were manually entered. No phishing, no malware. I frowned. "So someone had my login?" He nodded. "Copied, most likely. No external breach. This was done from inside." I leaned back, arms folded. "I reported this incident the day it happened." David gave a tight smile. "And we're glad you did, because it wasn't isolated." He clicked again. Another screen. We found others. Emails slightly altered. Spreadsheets edited after sign-off. Files rerouted to wrong recipients. All traced to systems used by 3 people. He tapped a name, including Jason Carr's executive assistant. I didn't move. He continued carefully. "We're not accusing anyone yet, but this was coordinated. A pattern meant to discredit, maybe even force you out quietly." My jaw tightened. "What happens now?" I asked. David hesitated. "Mr. Carr, the senior, has asked us to present findings to him directly. No filters." I nodded. "I want to be there." David blinked. "You're not required." "I'll be there," I said again. "If the truth's finally coming out, I want to be in the room when it does." He didn't argue. That night I barely slept. Not because I was scared, but because I couldn't stop thinking about the others. All the employees who had left quietly over the last year. Some of them brilliant, high-performing, promising leaders, who suddenly moved on. I used to think it was just burnout, or better offers. Now I wasn't so sure. How many of them had been quietly dismantled the same way? How many had been victims of someone like Jason? Someone with just enough power. And not enough conscience? The next morning, I arrived early. The boardroom was quiet, clean. polished in that uncomfortable way offices always are before something explosive happens. Mr. Carr stood at the window. David arrived with 2 other auditors, and then, 10 minutes late, Jason, phone in hand, calm, smirking, until he saw me. He stopped at the door. "She's not part of the audit committee," he said. Mr. Carr didn't turn around. "She's here at my request." Jason's smirk twitched. "This is supposed to be confidential." "Then you shouldn't have used company systems to forge internal communications," I said, voice calm, sharp. Jason scoffed. "That's ridiculous." David spoke next. "We've traced multiple login attempts tied to your assistant's credentials, everyone connected to manipulated files targeting Nora Wells." Jason's face started to shift. "You're reaching," he muttered. "She's just bitter about being let go." I met his eyes. "You didn't let me go, Jason. You sabotaged me. And you almost cost this company the biggest deal in 5 years." Finally, Mr. Carr turned. His voice was quiet, heavy. "I gave you a chance," he said to his son. "More than one. And you've done nothing but tear down the people trying to build something real here." Jason's confidence cracked. "This isn't what you think." "No," Mr. Carr interrupted. "It's worse." He turned to the auditors. "The board will review this report. Until then, Jason Carr is suspended, effective immediately." Jason opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He looked at me one last time, not with rage, but disbelief, like he'd just realized that none of his tricks were going to save him. 2 weeks passed. The board didn't drag its feet. The audit findings were conclusive. Falsified emails, altered spreadsheets, unauthorized access, delayed communications, all tied to Jason either directly or through people he manipulated. There was no spin, no misunderstanding. Just misconduct. Jason's suspension became termination, no dramatic exit, no press release, just a quiet internal memo and a revoked badge. But word spread fast. By noon, his office was cleared. By the end of the day, the junior staff had already erased his name from the internal calendar system. Some people celebrated in whispers. Others stayed quiet, afraid to look too eager. Me? I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt still. Like a storm had finally passed, and now the air was calm enough to breathe again. A few days later, I was called into Mr. Carr's office. The door was already open. He was sitting at his desk, not with a folder or a laptop, but with a pen resting across his fingers. He gestured for me to sit. "I've been thinking," he said, "about everything that's happened, and what this firm is, and what it needs to become." I stayed silent. "You've shown more leadership in the past month than most people show in an entire career. You protected our biggest deal. You held your ground when it would have been easier to disappear. You didn't escalate. You documented. You didn't lash out. You led." Then he reached into a drawer and slid a new folder across the desk. Inside, a promotion letter, Director of Legal Strategy, executive level, reports directly to him. Full control over her team, including hiring, budget, and internal oversight reforms. I blinked. "I didn't ask for this," I said. "I know," he replied. "That's why you deserve it." I paused. The title didn't excite me. The office didn't impress me. But the opportunity? That mattered. "If I accept this," I said slowly, "I want real authority. I want to build a culture that protects its people, not just its profits. I want a reporting system that doesn't punish truth. And I want to be able to bring back people we lost unfairly." He nodded without hesitation. "You'll have it." I nodded. "Then I accept." That evening, I sat alone in what would be my new office. It was still being renovated. No nameplate yet. Just a clean desk and an untouched notepad. I stared at the empty chair across from mine and thought about how many times I'd been told to stay silent, to let things go, to avoid making waves. And I thought about the younger employees watching, the interns who had seen me humiliated, fired, and then return. Some of them had already reached out quietly, asking how I stayed calm, asking how I didn't quit. I'd told them the truth. You don't always get to pick the battle, but you do get to decide who you become in the middle of it. A few weeks later, I found myself walking past the same glass boardroom where Jason once stood, arms folded, smirking, telling me I was no longer needed. It looked different now, not because of the furniture, because of me. I stopped for a moment, just outside the door. The room was empty, sunlight spilling across the table, casting long shadows over the polished floor. That was where it all started, where I stood silent and smiled as he fired me. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I already knew what he didn't, that contracts have clauses, and some of them are written by the people you underestimate. I stepped away from the glass and returned to my new office. The inbox was full: performance reviews, budget drafts, an invite from the CEO of Crownwell for a celebratory dinner in Malmindesended, Dubai. But I paused to read something else, an anonymous report submitted through the new internal system we'd just launched. This place feels safer than it used to. Thank you. It wasn't signed. It didn't need to be, because that, not the title, not the paycheck, was the real promotion. I didn't rebuild this company by yelling louder than Jason. I rebuilt it by staying, documenting, choosing dignity over drama, and refusing to forget who I was, even when they did. Last I heard, Jason had applied to 2 smaller firms out of state. His name had started to carry a reputation, not because I spread it, but because actions ripple louder than words when paper. Trails are involved. Some said Mr. Carr may have pulled strings to keep things quiet. A father's final act of protection. I didn't ask. I didn't care, because legacy isn't built in one decision. It's built in 100 quiet ones, the kind you make when no one's watching. And this time, I wasn't going to let anyone write mine for me. Sometimes I still think about the moment I walked out of that boardroom the first time. The morning I was fired without warning. How calm I felt. How quiet it was. Jason thought I was defeated. But what he didn't realize is that I was just letting go of what no longer served me. I wasn't weak. I wasn't finished. I was ready, and I've never had to prove my worth to anyone like him again. He thought firing me was the end. But it was just the part where I stopped carrying his weight and started carrying my own.